make it so that the best people can come and work here and have a very big impact very quickly. I think that those are the most important things. And if you get those right, then you can actually make a lot of mistakes. Actually, one of the core values of Facebook is move fast. And we used to write this down by saying move fast and break things. And the idea was, unless you're breaking some stuff, you're not moving fast enough, right? And I think that's still basically true. I mean, right now, we've optimized so much of our culture around just making it so that people can come and build things quickly, right? Whether it's everything from having the right tools and the right development environment to build things quickly, to nightly code pushes, hiring the best people who have a bias towards just pushing things very quickly, very entrepreneurial. The whole culture is tuned around that. And I think there's probably something in that for other entrepreneurs to learn, which is that making mistakes is okay. At the end of the day, the goal of building something is to build something, not to not make mistakes, right? So in order to get to any reasonable conclusion, you're going to make missteps along the way. And as long as you learn from them and those become valuable in getting to where you want to go, then I think that that's fine.
And how do you build up a skin thick enough? I mean, you have been through already just huge praise, huge criticism of every decision you make, second guessing, all that stuff. You probably get more advice than anyone ever should get in a lifetime, most of which is probably BS. How do you sort through that and just sort of say, look, I know I'm young, I get it, but I'm going to trust my gut, I got good people around me, I'm going to make the decision. How do you basically tune it out, which is what any successful leader has to do?
Well, I think a lot of it is you have to kind of stay grounded with what you're trying to do, right? So a lot of it is just what you just said, right? I want to listen to the people around me, as opposed to what, a lot of people outside who know less about what our business is doing and what our goals are and kind of have their own opinions on how stuff should work, what would they think about things? And I think that that's one of the things that we've always done very well here is we have a strong sense of purpose as a company. We didn't start Facebook to build a website, right? We didn't start Facebook to build a company. We started this because we wanted to make the world more open and connected. Building a site is the first step towards that. 250 million users is a start. I think, I think over time a lot more people will be using it. And I think over time, a lot more people will be using it beyond a website. I mean, I think the platform that we're developing and Facebook Connect are some of the things that I'm the most excited about. And we have almost 1 million developers right now who are building things ranging from small, just groups of people who are building things in college, getting started like I did, to small businesses, to large businesses that have hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue that are primarily built on top of a Facebook platform. And that's really exciting. And I think a lot of that just comes from staying grounded, having very good people around you who share what you're trying to do. And for us, it's like we have a very strong sense of purpose in the culture.
So Facebook has this tremendously vocal user base. Anytime you make a change, people scream. It doesn't matter what it is. And in the years that I've been watching the company, you launched news feeds, huge screaming, you stuck with it.
1 million people that's screaming.
Screaming. And you stuck with it, and it's been now one of the core attributes of the company that everybody talks about. Beacon came out, big announcement, lots of people screamed. That one you backed off on and said, okay, we'll do it differently or we'll revisit it or what have you. How do you make those decisions, and what accounts for the difference there?
Well, one of the interesting things is just the volume of the feedback that we get. And I think that that's a testament to what we're trying to do as a company. We're trying to give everyone that voice, right, and make it so that people who wouldn't have necessarily otherwise had a venue for communicating or sharing that information about what they think now have that. So, when we look at that, when we see the feedback, I mean, part of this is just, okay, it's working, right? It's working well. But then a lot of it is, we really listen to what people are saying, and then we think about, okay, this is where it is today. We know where we want to go in the future. What if their feedback is going to be very valuable in helping us build the best product for the long term? And which pieces do we think that over time they'll get used to? Or, when I say they'll get used to, I think a lot of it is because we're building this network, right, where something may end up, one thing that users ask for a lot, for example, is they want just different designs on their pages. Right. And we've routinely said no to that because we just think it's actually better for everyone if the pages stay clean, right? So we make a lot of decisions that optimize for the network as opposed to what a specific user is asking for at that given point in time. So Newsfeed is an example of something where I think it just changed some of the social norms, right? People put up information, they were expecting to share it with people, Newsfeed completely respected all the privacy settings, and it made it so that the information was easier to get access to for the people that you decide to share something with. So if I decide to put a photo album up and said that you could see it, then now it would just go to you a lot more easily. And that was different from what people expected, but we figured that it was a more efficient way for the system to work.
Right, but so they freaked out. But in that case, you said, whoa, it's going to work out. Just watch it, get used to it. Maybe you give them little ways to tinker with it, but you stuck with it. On Beacon, you didn't. You said, it seems to me, you said, you know what, you're right. We goofed, went a little too far. Let's change it. And so is it your users, you sort of say, you know what, that's actually a good point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there's Beacon. There are lots of examples where we've gotten feedback from users on large projects and little ones as well that have changed our decisions. And that's one of the great things about the internet is you can launch something and immediately get feedback and immediately react and build something good and launch it the next week, right? Which just wouldn't have been possible with more traditional businesses. But I mean, one of the themes through all these, though, one of the things that we talk about a lot is giving users control over their information. And this is a really fundamental thing on Facebook because the more control people have, the more comfortable they are sharing things, right? I'll put up a photo album from my vacation because I know that I can share it with exactly the people that I want. I can control those privacy settings. But even more importantly, I can take it down if I don't want it to be up anymore, right? And on a lot of the rest of the web, you don't have that flexibility and you don't have that kind of control, and that's one of the things that drives all the sharing that exists here. One of the things that's interesting is we talk about this constantly and we realize that it's a very important thing. A lot of the times when we get feedback from users, it's just to remind us of how important that is to them. So around Newsfeed or Beacon or just any of these different things, a lot of the message that we got from users was we want even more control. So that's just a big part of what we spend our time developing is constantly adding features that give people control of their information in different ways. And we know, and we kind of have this formula that we give people control, they are comfortable sharing more, that makes the site more valuable, and just it becomes a better product for everyone, and then more people use it. And that's just a huge part of what we do. And
so you're used to this for now. So when it comes to launching a big new feature or what have you, you know there's going to be screaming. Mm-hmm. You get the screaming. Do you then have sort of a war room meeting to evaluate the screaming and say, this is something
we like to think we're getting a
change?
little bit better at this. The interesting thing is that it's such a different scale at which these products launch. So when we launched Newsfeed, we had only 10 million users, which is pretty hard to imagine given that it was only 2.5 years ago, and now we have 250 million users. So the scale is so much different now, right, than it was back then. So if we launch something now, we will get a lot of feedback, but it's a much smaller percent of the user base, right? And I think that a lot of that is because we're getting better at communicating with users, understanding the ways in which they want control over their information, building them in when we launch products, or in a lot of cases even before we launch products, just continually launching things that are giving people more control and helping them share information in different ways that they want. And I don't know, I guess I would hope that over time the trend is that we have fewer of these.
As a percentage. So you've talked a lot about how important the culture is, getting the right people. Mm-hmm. The big company elsewhere in the Valley, Google, has made a huge to-do about 20% time. Mm-hmm. The developers have to have time to dream and think of their products, and their projects and so forth. What do you think of that? Do you have 20% time here?
Well, we do things a bit differently. So we have a culture that's very focused on being very focused on what we're building. So focus is a really important part of it.
But which it wasn't at Google for a long time. Now it seems to be in vogue. So they may be saying, the focus is better. But
at the same time, we want to make sure that everyone can come and add their ideas. Some of the best ideas throughout the company's evolution, they have just been from just places all throughout the company, whether it's an engineer or someone on the customer support team or just different areas around the company. So we've always had these hackathons, right, that are basically time that we allocate, that the only rule is that you don't work on what you work on the rest of the time. And it's basically an incubator for people to prototype different ideas, much in the spirit of how Facebook got founded originally, the idea that you can build anything good in a day or a couple of days, right, and get a version of that running.
So you get it running, you then test it internally?
Yeah, and then we can see, and that helps us shape the roadmap and what we want to do in the future. But we also have a culture where we want to stay very focused. And we don't want to run with a lot of projects that we don't expect to launch, right? So we want to get a lot of ideas, have those ideas shape where we want to go, and then execute in a very focused way on the stuff that we're going to do. But I mean, our culture, I mean, we have a few values that are really important to us. And one, which I talked about before, is just moving fast. Right? The whole company is really optimized around someone joining, being able to build something very quickly, be able to launch it quickly, iterate very quickly on that, get feedback quickly. That moving fast ethos is a huge part of what we do. And another big part of it, which we've kind of talked about, is just this idea of wanting to be bold, right, in the decisions that we make. And we have this belief that you never build something great by doing it the same way that other people have done it. So there are a lot of things that there are best practices around, but for the core things that we want to do, when we have the decision to either do it the same way that someone else has done it or do it in a different way, we're going to choose to do it in a different way. And we really encourage people all throughout the company to think about things in that way and make bolder decisions.
But it's think about it, come up with ideas, execute it in very small form, and then we'll decide as a company whether we're going to go for it. It's not everybody has their own pet project that they're working on, and we're going to have 78 different products in beta, and we'll see what works, and so forth.
Well, I mean, we encourage people to build things in their free time as well, right? And I mean, I think that's a lot of what Google has done with their program. So we have that all the time. I mean, the people here are just building stuff like night and day. And there are venues where people can experiment with that publicly or privately inside the company. There are just like a lot of different things going on. But one of the big advantages that I think we have as a smaller company is just focus, right? I mean, we have a very focused mission. I mean, what we want to do is make it so that people can share more information, control their information, and can stay connected with the people they care about. And those are kind of two core use cases of the product. And almost everything about what we're doing is focused on optimizing those two things.
Great. So you're 5 years into your career as a founder and entrepreneur of this massive global organization, which is amazing, but we'll leave that aside. So, I mean, what do you think the three keys to Facebook's success at innovating have been thus far, if you had to really narrow it down to three?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot of the cultural values that we've talked about so far. So, I mean, I think making it so that this is a place where people can move quickly is just key. Having an emphasis on making bold decisions and being bold in the products that we build, I think is why we have products like Newsfeed, right, which at the time was controversial, but now is one of the core parts of the product and has been emulated by a lot of other startups and companies. Or why we have Platform. Right, when we built our first version of the development platform, I mean, people weren't thinking about social networks as social platforms for social software development. And that was a pretty controversial decision, and we decided to go for it. Now we have a development community of almost 1 million developers. So that is kind of a direct byproduct of that kind of line of thinking. And then I think just also focusing on leverage and impact. The best people want to go to the place where they can have the biggest impact. And we have always focused on this ratio here of the number of engineers that we have to the size of the user base, like for the impact that they're going to have. And what we found is that each engineer here is roughly responsible for more than 1 million users. Right? If you do that calculation, that's much more than smaller companies that have smaller user bases but in smaller employee bases, and much larger than larger companies that have maybe more users but also a lot more employees. So we're kind of in this sweet spot, and we've always focused on building the company in a way where there's just a lot of leverage, and that would encourage just the best people to come join the company. And
so speak personally and talk about the three keys to your own success. I mean, there have been, again, you're wonderful at attributing the success to everybody else, which is great, and they deserve it and appreciate it and so forth. On the other hand, you've taken this thing going after an opportunity that thousands of people have gone after, and you are the one who has led this company to be the world dominant player in this right now. There are a million ways you could have screwed up. So what do you think the three keys to your success are?
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to those values, right? I mean, the values often come from the founder, the person running the company. So I think I believe those things probably the most strongly of people at the company.
Move fast.
Move fast, be bold, right? Focus on impact. I mean, I think, I think long-term focus is a really important part of this, right? And we've had a lot of opportunities to optimize for the shorter term, whether it's in selling the company or in doing different products that would have benefited us in the short term, but not optimized for the long-term impact. And And I just think, opportunities like this don't come around that often. So when you get one, I feel like you almost have a duty to see it through and build it to be what it can be.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks again for